Hello, everyone. This is Preston Clark, president here at EverFi. I run our higher ed and corporate compliance divisions. I really appreciate you setting an hour out of your day to join us. I'm sure 2 weeks ago you didn't wake up saying, "Gosh, I hope EverFi is a part of my life," but here we are, and we're really excited to be here. We know that change is hard, and so there's a ton of questions that have come in, and we're really excited about what the coming together means, but we know that there are invariably lots of questions, and sometimes exciting questions and sometimes anxious ones, and we want to get through those today and also really tell you about what EverFi represents as an organization, where we're headed from both a prevention and compliance perspective, and how we hope to be working with your campus, both in a way that's reflective of the quality relationship you've had over the years with Workplace Answers and Campus Answers, but is also in line with a much larger organization that is very much committed to prevention and compliance, and certainly the customer or partner experience that is paramount to our ability to do our jobs and to maintain the high level of partner satisfaction we've established over the years. Quick info: I know that many of you don't know me. I travel all around the country meeting with campuses. I'm in Iowa today. I was in Houston yesterday. I'll be in Chicago tonight. We are dedicated to serving your campuses in the multitude of ways that our products and our services reflect. My background is in both technology and compliance. I used to be in-house counsel for the University of Miami, but I've worked in this intersection now of technology and compliance and prevention for a number of years, and see it as both an honor and a responsibility to be the leader of a really amazing organization that's really committed to the core issues of prevention and compliance. With me today, the majority of today's 60 minutes will be led by George Homer, Vice President here at EverFi, who's literally worked with hundreds of campuses, bringing them online with prevention and compliance training programs, as well as Rob Bulow, our Vice President of Prevention Education. He and his team are really the backbone of our organization from a prevention perspective, both on the alcohol side, sexual violence. We have a new opioid course coming out, like just a really amazing team that is the backbone of our efficacy, the thought leadership, and really the tremendous expertise that goes in the development of our current courses and the future ones we're building. I will apologize in advance. I am on the road today, so if you hear a little bit of background noise, not an ideal setting for us to be running a webinar with 100 campuses who are joining us today, but I appreciate your tolerance for any background noise that you may hear. Wanted to, before I hand the controls over to George and Rob, wanted to just jump right into a few questions that you all asked from the outset while you were registering for this webinar today. Some of these I'll refer to as like TBD, meaning they will be discussed during the course of the webinar, either by George or Rob today, and the other ones I'm happy to dive into now. And for those of you who get some questions answered today but have more, I think Michele, prior to the webinar, introduced you to the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, but would certainly encourage you to ask any questions, clarifying questions. We'll do our best to get to them during the hour today. If we don't, though, please just submit them, and I promise we will follow up, either I personally or someone on the team will. It's really, like, again, we want to share our enthusiasm for this coming together of two really great organizations, but we also understand that there's a lot of nuance and complexity and implications to what this means for you in a multitude of ways. So certainly want to be a good ear to understanding any concerns you may have. So question number one that came in: how will the acquisition affect our working relationship with Campus Answers, the account representative, and who will handle customer support? George Homer will walk through our customer success team. They're based in Boston. It's an unbelievable team. We have a very large organization that's committed to account management, that is dedicated to higher ed specifically. We serve 1,700 colleges and universities. It may feel like that means that you're just a number for us now, but that couldn't be further from the truth. As you get to meet CW and Lisa and the amazing team in Boston of over 15 dedicated account managers, We have 24/7 tier 1 support. Like, what you will see is that from a support perspective, this is going to be an improvement. And that being said, your account management team is not going anywhere. So this truly is a Better Together initiative. There are no cuts, no people have gone away. You will continue to work with your account manager. You may also be introduced to other people on our team as a part of this, because there's certainly there's more to offer than we could offer you yesterday. And so part of it is making sure that you're hearing new voices, and we're talking to new folks on your campus who represent the various educational initiatives that we deliver. So in the short term, don't worry, your account manager will stay on your account, but don't be surprised if you also get introduced to other folks on the EverFi CS team as well. Second question, what happens if we have contracts with Campus Answers and EverFi? Again, don't worry about that. We will, as our relationship, as you come up for renewal, as we discuss what the future of our relationship looks like, there'll be plenty of opportunities for us to continue doing business together as we continue to do business together, and as we renew contracts. They certainly will be on EverFi paper, but certainly I don't want anyone to have anxiety about that. We are, as a former general counsel for a major university, I can appreciate the complexity of procurement and legal process and review, and we have a lot of flexibility in that regard. So no need for alarm there, but certainly if that's an area, as we start to have renewal conversations and restructuring and expansion conversations with you, very much want to make sure we're on the same page about your the sort of the contractual relationship that we do have. Will we be able to continue with our current training as is? Short answer is nothing's being turned off. We know that we're in the second quarter of the year. We're entering summer soon, where you will be preparing for a fall rollout invariably of both whether it's a faculty staff program or a student program. We're not here to pull the rug out from you. Do we have a much larger course catalog? Are we building more courses than you would have been exposed to in the past? Yes. And so we very, very much want to have a conversation with you about 2017 and to see if there's an opportunity for us to work with you in a different and more expansive way. So definitely expect those conversations, but rest assured that that to the extent that you have your program and you're set to go, we're not here to disrupt your plan for 2017. We're really just here to add to it to the extent possible. Will there be appropriate staff, legal team to support the courses from a compliance perspective? And sort of how do we go about updating legislation and statutes that impact the delivery and the content within the courses? And so rest assured that we have George Homer will get into it. We do have a large legal team here, and that's core to who we are and what we do. So not only the same team that you would have had at workplace that's responsible for this has just been added to, and it's a larger team now. So rest assured that is very much a part of our DNA. Next question is, how might the institution realize financial benefits by building our training courses, by bundling our training courses? So what George will talk a little bit about today is that in recent years, we've approached the market a bit differently, and we do something that, as a prevention organization, as a compliance organization, that focuses on very, very intractable social issues, from sexual violence to substance abuse to harassment to diversity. We're not really in the business of selling individual courses. And so the short answer is that our hope is for every campus, as most campuses work with us now, is that you have an unlocked version of what we do that gives your IT department the ability to train on cybersecurity and gives your Dean of Students the opportunity to train both undergrads and grad students on different training initiatives, for you to use ongoing training programs that change every year that address different audiences. It's really our goal to be that expansive provider, just because we know, as you'll hear from Rob Eula, both from a prevention perspective and, of course, from a compliance perspective, it's incumbent upon us to put you in a position to be doing the best work possible. And it's historically been difficult for us to do that if we're just meeting a fraction of the needs that you have in both of those regards. Will there be new training content available? Absolutely. George will touch on that. And then what will be the process of enrolling course registration? So we will talk about the technology aspect a little bit today. For those of you who've had issues in the past or anxieties, around mass deployments, either to your faculty, staff, your student populations, I can tell you that, take a sigh of relief or take a deep breath, because we deploy to over 6 million people a year on our platforms. And certainly if that's been, an area of concern, would love to talk to you about how we can help in that arena, because we know that despite our best efforts in building great programs with great instructional design, with great research, that if they're not reaching the intended audience, that we've dropped the ball. So that is a core mission of what we do, and we certainly, from a technology perspective, are in a position to do it. So those are the questions I want to just touch on briefly, and I don't want to steal the thunder from Rob or from George, but we have an amazing prevention education team that's also based in Boston that Rob is the leader of, and I'm really excited for him to introduce that team to you in a few minutes. But this is part of what you inherit with this relationship. So it's really important to me that your institution broadly understands that this is not a retraction, but this is an expansion, irrespective of how your relationship may change with us. Like, I need you to understand that we are a larger organization with more resources and more dedicated folks to prevention and compliance. And that extends into compliance as well, where we have a team of in-house attorneys who will be working alongside the attorneys at Workplace Answers to ensure that the courses that you have now and the courses you have in the future are up to date. So last slide that I want to touch on is just as we think about the expansive nature of what we do and the various topics and the corners of the campus that we work with. We are a large organization. We have over 100 people who are just dedicated to our higher education division. And so just wanted to give you some peace of mind there that this is a very, very talented group that I'm honored to be working with on a daily basis. And with that, would like to transition into what will be a theme throughout the next 45 minutes or so, which is it's very important that we get to know you, that this is the beginning of a relationship. And the reason why you hear the background noise again is because I'm on the road. I'm in Iowa now, and I'll be in Chicago tonight and tomorrow. And it's a big part of our lives to be spending time with our higher ed partners and learning the issues that you're facing on campus and how we can serve you better. But in that regard, we hope to start to learn a bit more about you today. So we will have some polls and some surveys, I think 4 of them throughout this webinar today, that'll be learning about how you see us and the work that you're doing on your campuses. And I would really ask that you participate in those surveys just as a jumping off point for us to start to understand you a little bit better. Rob will run those surveys, and as a point of introduction, I will begin to pass this off to him and let him start this first poll. Rob?
Hey, thanks a bunch, Preston. Y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you great, Rob.
Great, perfect. Well, so happy to be here today and to be working for an organization that doesn't just work with higher education institutions. As Preston indicated, so many people, particularly the folks on our prevention education team, worked at higher education institutions. And we know that the folks who are committed to addressing these issues are diverse and span our entire institution. So we're really interested in this first poll in starting as a warm-up, getting you used to the technology, and also giving us a sense of who's here on the webinar today. So if we can go ahead and launch that first poll, you can see here which department do you represent. Are you from Student Affairs? Are you from HR, Health and Wellness, Title IX or General Counsel, or some other department? So as Preston indicated, we would love to learn about you. It starts here. We've had about 60% of folks voted. Get a couple more on here. All right, so we've got about 75% voted. Thank you all so much. We're going to go ahead and close that poll and share the results. And as you can see here, it's incredibly diverse who we've got on the line. Certainly, the bulk of folks, about half, are coming from human resource offices, and then a decent split between student affairs offices as well as Title IX, general counsel, some folks from health and wellness as well. As I said, we know these issues span across our entire campuses, and we're going to talk more about that certainly on our next slide and throughout the course of our presentation. So at this point, I want to turn it over to George, and thank you all for participating in that. And George is going to talk more about how we're connecting with diverse stakeholders across the country who are all committed to addressing these critical health and safety challenges. So take it away, George.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you everyone for joining us today. So it's really important for me to really frame up how our customers see us, whether it's compliance, prevention, or technology. And so I've helped hundreds of campuses with online compliance and prevention training, from the smallest campuses to the largest campuses in the country. And so we know that there's a number of different stakeholders that are involved, as we saw from the previous slide. And so I've had the unique opportunity to go and travel and meet with about 50 campuses over the last 9 months. And so these are just some pictures of us meeting Ohio State and Notre Dame and the CSU system, which are all long-term partners of ours. But I think it really illustrates that as we look at the complexity in having conversations across a multitude of stakeholders in higher education, having these deep conversations and really sharing with you folks the big picture of why we're here today, and really welcoming you into the EverFi family. And so when we look at the different stakeholders involved in higher education around compliance and prevention content, we know that it's extremely complex. There's different departments managing different course content with different repositories, and so in many cases, not everyone is on the same page. And so it's our goal as we have these conversations and we go and visit with our campuses that we're really navigating these complex situations, because we know that everyone really cares about having a strong and positive and safe community, which is what this really is all about. And so to talk a little bit about the theme of some of the material we'll be going over today. So historically, Campus Answers and EverFi has really provided primary prevention programming for new students and new employees. And so we'll talk today some of the regulations that have shifted, that have required us to think differently about this and address it differently. So we'll definitely talk about the regulations, but as Rob had mentioned, and Rob's our Vice President of Prevention Education, we know that the best practice piece, really looking to make a difference and do the right thing, is core to our mission. And so those are all things that we look at as this expansion in really helping our customers get into a place that addresses compliance and prevention in a really scalable, efficient, and effective way. Now, to talk a little bit about the 5 elements of a campus-wide prevention program, and so EverFi has been helping over 1,700 campuses for a number of years, actually over a decade, and we know that online education is really the most efficient way to launch a global campus-wide program. And so as it relates to a campus-wide initiative, we're going to go through really 5 elements that go into an effective online prevention and compliance program. And so we'll talk about compliance, where laws change at the state and federal level, and we know New York, California, Illinois have all been really areas that we've seen those legal requirements shift. And so as we look at a campus-wide solution, compliance is not the end-all, be-all, but it matters a great deal to ensure the institution has covered content, so efficacy-based, high-quality content that goes into this campus-wide program, whether it's an in-house built program or a third-party developed solution. Some campuses have the competency to build out their own program, but we know that the resources involved are tremendous, and so many folks have opted to use really a vendor to make sure that they're covered. And the design, and so Rob likes to say we must meet students where they're at, and so programs for new students are different than a tenured faculty member, are different than a graduate student or a continuing student. And so high adoption to complete the courses because it's resonating with the audience is really what we're talking about here. And so having a solid design format is critical. And then the administrative process, which oftentimes gets overlooked. It's not enough just to create the program, but it has to reach its audience. And then lastly, data is a huge piece of this, and Rob will talk more about the data piece in a few moments, but we know that building and deploying is not the end. We're talking about massive data sets, outcomes, impact, to really change culture and get better together. And so this is the future of our work as we adapt to these moving changes of prevention best practice. And so these are all really important components of the campus-wide approach. And so I'm going to talk a few more minutes here just to go in depth on some of these areas. And so as we look at 1 through 5 here, the different stakeholders have different areas that this matters to with these elements. And so as I mentioned, I've been doing this for some time. My colleague Jen Davidson, Preston, we've been spending the last 9 months visiting many of our campus customers. And so I want to talk a little bit about what we've learned during these conversations. And so we're having meetings with many stakeholders, putting these folks in the same room, and we know that some didn't want to meet in the same room together, which showed they cared, but they had different needs or concerns related to their role. So compliance around Title IX, they care about reporting requirements. The provost cares about reporting requirements. But looking at health and wellness, we know compliance is really a red flag. If there's no prevention best practice that needs to be covered, health and wellness really isn't looking just to check the box, but they're looking to make a difference on campus. Content, and so when we look at prevention experts and the departments that are focused on substance abuse, really the intersection between Title IX and health and wellness, both meeting compliance requirements and also providing evidence-based best practice material to hit the mark and move the needle on behavior change. Design matters to everyone, so student affairs, frontline administrators, HR, and we know in many cases HR is responsible for assigning mandatory training to tenured faculty that they haven't had to take previously, and so the course needs to be built with a good look and feel that resonates to get high adoption and reach the high bar that's set for higher education. And then administration, and so very interesting, some folks focus on outcomes and population reached. Smaller campuses are looking at deployment differently, but in all cases, administration matters. And these are complex populations with graduate students, adult learners, online students, volunteers, sophomores, contract employees, and so making sure this is campus-wide is of the utmost importance. And then data, and we say data generally, but it's different areas. Data from a compliance perspective, data from a best practice perspective, and we all agree it's important, but for different audiences and different contexts, we want to see the impact of programs of moving the needle on preventing sexual assault. And so looking into course surveys, climate surveys, so it's universally understood around this campus-wide prevention and programming focus on what the outcomes are. And so these are 5 elements as we see them. There's a time when a lot of campuses were looking at this from a primary prevention program, and complexity has really has been driven by compliance, which was a short window of time where campuses sprinted to get something done. And so we saw this from incoming folks to grow to something much bigger, but we believe this is critical in building out a campus-wide program. And so in a few minutes, I'm going to pass this off to Rob Bulow, whose expertise is in prevention and best practice, but I'm going to take you folks through an overview of White House guidance we saw in early January from Vice President or former Vice President Biden, as well as compliance requirements that we've seen over the last 4 years. And so this may be familiar to many of you, so I'm going to move through this quickly as we have a lot to cover. We're also going to send out this guide for reference as we end this call today. And so earlier in the year, under former Vice President Joe Biden, there was a really interesting document that was released talking about some aspects that are in alignment with how we think about a campus-wide sexual assault program. And so when we read the first paragraph, campus values, signals apathy, or signals that we care. We know the beginning of the school year is most risky for sexual assault, and so educating students throughout their academic career is really the flux of what we're doing here. We know that this time is critical for the first-year students and transfer students. We know many times graduate students get overlooked, and there's no silver bullet, not by EverFi, not by anyone. So this has to really be an ongoing perspective for programming. And so, and I promise this isn't going to be long, but providing annual training, we say when we're talking about faculty, staff, we're talking about a lot of folks, volunteers, contract employees, faculty, staff, which really presents a unique risk of interacting with students and employees and can be overlooked in many cases. And so there's a huge responsibility, and it's important that these people have access to the material they need as many times they're in different areas of the campus. And it's difficult to train some of these contract employees, but it's really critical to getting it done, and it is the right thing to do. And so, so from a compliance perspective, and Preston's the attorney, I'm the hut, so I'm going to move through this rather quickly. So we know what's required under clarity. All incoming students and new employees must be offered a primary prevention. All faculty and students must be offered ongoing prevention. All enrolled students in an institution need to have airtight documentation to show what they've done to meet these requirements. Also want to address Title IX, which really deepens institutional responsibility to train students and faculty on an ongoing basis. And so a school should provide sexual violence training to students at regular intervals, and employees need to know what they're required to report on, as well as how to respond to reports of sexual violence. And beyond simply making primary and ongoing training available for students, the Department of Education's Campus Safety Handbook states that the initiatives must be developmentally appropriate, they need to be tailored to the strengths and needs of an institution, and that every school must demonstrate a good faith effort to actually reach and train every student with these programs every year. And so we talk about a campus-wide approach to sexual assault, and I think it's important to define what that means. And so to recap, from my perspective, there's really 5 important elements behind a program to consider. It's important to be empathetic, to care about different areas, selecting a program that has the campus-wide reach, and the White House guidance is defining the scope of what's required and what's important. And to say a campus-wide approach for new hires and students is categorically different than a campus-wide approach for the entire campus, juniors, contract workers, grads, faculty, as such a global solution is important as we're talking about training 30-year tenured faculty members who have never had to take anything before. And so they can't watch the same course every year. It can't be low quality. It must look good. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Rob to go through another poll.
Perfect, George. And before we jump into another poll, I think it's really important that we sort of revisit this notion about ongoing training, not just that it's required by federal legislation, Clery, Title IX, the Campus Safety Handbook, as well as the Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act, which talks about annual training for alcohol and other drugs. Ongoing training is actually critical for actually making an impact on these issues. We know from research that no single program has demonstrated a lasting impact on issues like sexual assault or alcohol abuse, that these need to be integrated, that they need to be deployed over time for us to build on skills. And so, coming from a campus myself, I recognize how hard it is to provide that prevention education over a student or employee's life course that's reaching a critical mass of them and also building on prior training to actually move them forward and develop new knowledge and new skills. So the data here clearly show that most schools are turning to and utilizing technology to help address that really important challenge. So to launch us into our next poll, we know that schools are using technology to address ongoing training requirements. We're actually really interested in learning more about which technology platforms all of you are using to deploy your trainings for students. So we'll go ahead and launch this poll, and you can see a number of options. Certainly EverFi, Campus Clarity is an option, Blackboard, Workplace Answers and Campus Answers, Canvas, and D2L. So if folks can just weigh in and share a little bit more about how you're administering online training to your student populations. Getting close to about 50% on the polls. Want to give folks just another minute to weigh in. Thank you for many of you that have. If we can just have other folks quickly go in. All right, we've reached the 50% mark, so why don't we go ahead and pause the poll and publish the results. Great. So clearly, no surprise here. Many of you are using Campus Answers or Workplace Answers as the technology platform to deploy your courses. We also know that many of you are also looking to other technology platforms, including EverFi and Campus Clarity platforms, Blackboard, D2L. As we're going to talk about in a minute, one thing that we learned about all of you through a survey that we conducted of many folks that's participating on this webinar is that the administrative capabilities of your technology platform is a critical priority for all of you. And we want you to know this is also an enormous priority for us, understanding how important it is for you to have a smooth and seamless deployment and tracking experience. So we'll go ahead and close that poll and actually move immediately to our next poll. And this is a question that really interests me because, as George said, the recent focus on sexual assault nationally through legislation, through activism, has really accelerated tremendous progress around primary and ongoing training to address issues of sexual assault, stalking, dating, and domestic violence. But that being said, the annual training requirements of the Drug-Free Schools and Campuses Act are often overlooked. I'd like to just ask a poll of folks, how many of you are familiar with Edgar Part 86 in terms of requirements for annual policy notification for your students and employees around alcohol and drug prevention? So I'm really interested to see what primary online training are you using to address alcohol and other drug prevention for your students. So let's go ahead and launch that poll now. You can see a number of different options here. Certainly Alcohol EDU, eCheckup to Go, also referred to as eChug by some, My Student Body, homegrown online courses, or no online course currently being used for alcohol and other drug prevention training for your students. All right, we're getting close to that 50% mark. We always hit a wall right here, so folks can just push us through to over 50%. That'd be great. All right, there we go. We hit it. So why don't we go ahead and close the poll. Thank you all again for participating. And let's share those results. All right, interesting. So what we can see here is that many schools aren't currently actually using online training to address alcohol and other drug prevention for your students. And certainly there's an array of other courses, Alcohol EDU, glad to see good adoption there, eCheckup to Go. Many schools here using homegrown online courses. I think it's really great to see so many schools using a variety of different trainings around these topics. And if you're not currently using online training around alcohol and other drug prevention, we certainly look forward to talking with you more about your AOD prevention efforts and how we can further support you and working with EverFi through Alcohol EDU, which is a nationally leading and proven effective alcohol education program. So thank you all. We've got one more poll coming up later in the presentation, but for now we're going to move forward and talk a little bit more about data that many of you have actually already shared with us. So we can go to the next slide. We're going to be sharing some results from our prevention priority diagnostic that a number of you have participated in prior to this webinar. So if you didn't, Michaela had probably sent you an email. You can certainly go back and participate in that. But before we talk about the prevention priority diagnostic data, I just want to acknowledge that many of you, in registering for the webinar, some of the initial questions we asked expressed the importance of subject matter expertise in your work with Campus Answers. And as Preston shared earlier, our team of prevention and compliance experts is really a testament to our commitment to best practice in addressing these important issues. And I'll say, for myself, I'm tremendously proud to work for an organization that is so deeply committed to best practice. And I'm sure that you will all find your work with our organization and our team of experts incredibly valuable as you do this important work as well. So the results from our prevention priority diagnostic, this is a tool that my team, our prevention education team, developed to better understand how important schools are rating each of those 5 elements of a comprehensive prevention program that George reviewed earlier. So let's go ahead and turn it over to the next slide. So before I actually share the results, I'm keeping you all at the edge of your seats from the participating Campus Answers schools. I just want to quickly recap the importance of thinking comprehensively about prevention training. So regardless of which of these elements you prioritize the greatest, the reason that we do this work is because of the impact these issues have on our communities and our mission as higher ed institutions. So the effects of issues like sexual assault or student drinking are complex and far-reaching. And so our prevention strategy has to be rigorous and comprehensive to help keep our students and employees safe and healthy. So with this prevention priority diagnostic, each of the 5 categories represented in this tool have 5 questions that you rate by importance. And if you answered extremely important to each of the 5 questions within these categories, the score you would get for that category would be 100%. And inversely, if you would be answering not at all important to each question in these 5 categories, it would be 0%. So why don't we go ahead and click forward and reveal the data. And here you can see the different priority areas for participating Campus Answers schools. And so the leading priority area is compliance. The single greatest item that got the highest score in this entire inventory was that content is consistent with current federal and state laws, regulations, and guidance. And that's tremendously important. I mean, certainly we know the consequences for non-compliance, but we also know that these laws are in place to improve the lives of our communities. Hence why we see content and design being so critical in terms of priorities for participants in this tool that are on the webinar now. And certainly with all of the requirements around primary and ongoing training, it makes sense that second to compliance, the next highest priority is the administrative process and the way that you are integrating with existing systems, deploying these courses, reporting on uptake and participation in your training efforts. So certainly it makes sense why that's such a huge priority for folks on the webinar. And while we see that data isn't quite as significant of a priority, it's certainly clear that this is still important to all of you. And we're going to talk more in a moment about why data is so critical to both prevention and compliance efforts. So thank you all for participating in that prevention priority diagnostic. I want to now go a little bit deeper in terms of what prevention best practice looks like and why we think about prevention in such a multifaceted way. So moving forward to the next slide. When it comes to existing research and frameworks for effectively addressing prevention issues, the 5 categories of our prevention priority diagnostic are well reflected in the 9 principles of effective prevention that come from a widely cited 2003 article. So you can see the citation there on the bottom of the slide. And as a public health framework, I come from a public health background. These principles rely on a foundation of population level implementation for culture change to take place. These issues don't happen in a bubble. They impact everyone on campus, and therefore we have to have training that's reaching everyone on campus. And so I'm sure as many of you know, the breadth and the depth and cadencing and complexity of designing and delivering a research-informed, a theory-driven campus-wide prevention program can be a daunting challenge, particularly considering that prevention offices might be insufficiently funded and staffed at many institutions. So while technology is by no means a silver bullet, it can be a cost-effective addition to your prevention strategy in that it helps to address some of those more challenging areas of scalability, of adaptive content, of dosage in terms of being able to reach people at multiple points over time, and then certainly around data reporting. All right, let's move forward to the next slide. So one of the traps that many prevention folks tend to fall into is that when we think about prevention, we tend to pretty myopically think about the programs that we do. But we have to recognize that good campus-wide prevention is more than just the programmatic efforts that we're delivering. We've got to, at the base of the pyramid, have to have the right people bought in across campus in a meaningful way in order to institutionalize a commitment to doing effective work. So, as we've seen in our campus visits that Preston and George talked about, and certainly the results of our prevention priority diagnostic, we know that stakeholders across all roles, including senior leaders on campus, presidents and chancellors, care about every single one of these facets of a campus-wide prevention program. So we've got to be tapping them to support and participate in our training. But beyond just support and resources, we also have to be translating that through intentional strategic planning, using campus data and best practice research to make sure that our prevention strategies are actually aligned with the unique needs and strengths of our campus so that they're poised to actually be impactful. And these approaches should also be backed up by a set of policies that you're writing and widely distributing and consistently enforcing that demonstrate your school's values, the expectations that you have of the members of your community, and certainly your commitment to safety. And once again, technology is a great way or a medium to be deploying those policies and ensuring that students or employees are able to e-sign that they have read and understood those policies. Not only is that sort of risk mitigation, that's just good prevention and knowing that people have actually accessed your policies and understand your values and expectations. So as you can see here, even though programming is just the tip of the iceberg, the core elements of a campus-wide program directly align with each of the components of a comprehensive prevention strategy. And this framework that you see here is really central to EverFi's campus prevention network. And we're committed to ensuring that our technology and our ongoing support of our customers recognizes the full ecosystem surrounding health and safety issues on campus. So moving forward to the next slide and wrapping up this best practice piece of the webinar, I want to just share with you 10 steps for effective prevention efforts. When it comes to the process of developing, deploying, assessing, and iterating on your prevention strategy, it really starts with identifying focus areas through needs assessments, building partnerships with other stakeholders that can support this work, and establishing goals that are specific, measurable, realistic, and timely, and then identifying those research-informed strategies that certainly check the boxes of compliance, but also are directly aligned with the goals that you're establishing so that you can develop that comprehensive approach that's going deep on the issues that you want to be talking about, that's reaching all of your students and employees, not just at one point in time, but multiple times while they're with you on your campus. And once you have that plan in place, then you can secure those resources that are needed for connecting your prevention efforts with mission critical institutional priorities like retention, like student success, like job satisfaction for employees. And once you have those resources, implementing those programs with fidelity. We know a good program that's delivered poorly is not a good program. So really wanting to make sure that you're scaling the scope of your trainings and reaching everyone and then assessing them and making sure you're evaluating everything, sharing those findings widely, and then constantly be iterating and improving on your efforts. So in terms of the priorities from our diagnostic, it's easy to see where it all fits in. Clearly, compliance is the things that we're required to train on, the primary and ongoing timing of the training, the members of our community we have to reach, content, we've got to be aligning with key outcomes and evidence-based strategies, design, critical, including our resources and policies, making sure our programs are accessible, and of course, being able to administer trainings with fidelity at scale is imperative. And all that being said, I wanted to come back to data. I said that I would, so I want to talk specifically about the role of data very quickly. So here we are. the need for that campus-specific data, it just can't be overstated because it gives you a snapshot of the unique needs and strengths of your campus. And that's part of the reason why climate surveys are so strongly encouraged and might actually be mandated in the future. So as you can see in this list, the first question we have to ask ourselves when we think about prevention is, what problem are we trying to solve? And without the data on unique needs and strengths of our community, we're really flying blind in terms of establishing priorities, allocating resources, engaging in a meaningful way with students and employees. And it's also really hard to share our successes, whether it's the fact that we reached 95% of our incoming students or demonstrating that our work has had an impact on our community. So I'll conclude here with saying that a commitment to data isn't just part of being in compliance, it's a testament to being a leading institution. And at EverFi, we're deeply invested in making rich administrative and impact data easily accessible to our customers that are dedicated to addressing both the letter and the spirit of legislation. So at this point, I want to turn it back over to George to talk a little bit more about how EverFi can further support your efforts.
Thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate everyone staying with us for a few more minutes here as we go through some of the new developments. As we look at this course list, this really represents a catalog of our flagship courses. I'm going to follow Rob's lead here, and I know that some of this won't be relevant, and I don't want to bombard you with courses that aren't relevant, but certainly want to provide some of these a big picture overview of what the courses are and look like. So we're going to provide unlocked demos as well that's specific to your roles and objectives. So I'm going to apologize now, but for folks that are on the call, if you can type in specific courses, whether it be harassment prevention, whether it be student alcohol abuse prevention that you would like to demo, happy to get that out to you here shortly. I know Rob talked a little bit about the climate survey piece, and so as we look at the benchmarking, as we look at the other components, we know that it's important to really think about this holistically. Here we have the climate survey platform, and we know that there could be legislation enacted here in the future, and so we have a really awesome tool here that came actually from the Campus Clarity acquisition that's currently used by over 100 campuses. And so this is a great instrument tool and builder that's customized to your specific campus. So with that, I'm gonna hand this back over to Rob as we wrap this up to talk about the Campus Prevention Network. And so really the new things that we're doing as the EverFi family to really lift all boats with a rising tide in thought leadership and in other events that you would have access to.
Great, thanks a bunch, George. And I just want to make sure that folks heard George's call to type in if there are specific content areas that you're interested in with regards to the courses, whether it's sexual harassment for employees, whether it's sexual assault and stalking for undergrad students, alcohol prevention training, prescription drugs, as Preston mentioned, that's a new course that's being added to our catalog. There's a variety of courses, so wanted to just make sure that folks heard that, and we'll certainly follow back up with you and share more about that course catalog.
And Rob,
so,
if I could just, I'm sorry, Rob, if I could just jump in really quickly on that regard too, because I know you'll be ending this, and this is Preston, just really, really quickly. To echo George's comment, we understand that there's a diverse audience on this webinar today, and some of you are just compliance folks, some of you are just on the student side, some of you have deployed just a primary sexual violence prevention program, that there's a really diverse group, and we've thrown a lot of information at you today. And so I really hope that the overarching sentiment coming out is this is a big resource that's now available to you. But peeling that back, we would love for, before we conclude the webinar, that you would pull out your keyboard and type in anything that you would like to see that we do. Like if you'd like to learn more about the Campus Prevention Network, if you'd like just a demo of the LMS platform we have that allows that reach 6 million people effectively and efficiently. The more specific you can be with us, in terms of what you'd like to see that's now available, the more prescriptive it will be, or the more informative it will be for us in following up to address and present that to you. So I'll give it back to you, Rob, but I just want to make sure that we're very explicit about giving folks an opportunity to voice what they'd like to see.
Sure, and I want to continue to pause here, as we've gone back to the catalog slides here so folks can see that complete student catalog. George, do you want to talk at all about the primary and ongoing courses for students and for faculty and staff?
Absolutely, Rob. Thank you. So as we look at our catalog, we've really broken this down into two areas. So primary prevention courses addressing alcohol abuse prevention as a standalone population level program, as well as Title IX and CLARI training for a primary program as well. And then we version that out for undergrads, grads, adult learners, because we know this needs to be age appropriate. Prescription drug abuse is coming out here in the next 30 days, which is a very much well-received program and very much needed to address these critical issues. On the ongoing courses, so these are iterative courses that change every year. They're refreshers, they're shortened, they're meant to make sure that folks don't see redundant material year after year and really address the student throughout their college career. And so having a follow-up or ongoing courses for sexual assault prevention to meet those ongoing requirements, providing alcohol abuse prevention refreshers, and then alcohol abuse prevention sanctions are all very much critical to this campus-wide approach. If we can go over to the faculty staff program, and so I know many of you folks on the call have used faculty staff programs, and so what we're really looking at here is a shift in providing a very inclusive campus-wide risk management, compliance, and prevention approach. And we have the primary prevention that is the baseline, and then annual ongoing refresher programs that continue to provide a iterative short refresher program year after year for those employees, and then other risk management topics like protecting minors, like illness and injury prevention, CLARI, ADA, diversity, which we're about to launch a new diversity course, drugs and alcohol, FERPA, data security, so all very much critical and higher ed specific. And with that, I'll turn this back over to Rob on the Campus Prevention Network.
Perfect. Thanks so much, George. And glad you got a chance to walk through that so folks can really weigh in specifically on the courses that you'd be interested in demoing. But I'm now tremendously excited to welcome all of you to our Campus Prevention Network. So we recently at EverFi announced the launch of this network in communications to over 3,000 college presidents across the country, as well as 20,000 higher education administrators. And we're soon going to be sharing with all of you additional information about activating your membership. And we launched this network to support colleges and universities in driving lasting large-scale change on critical health, wellness, and safety issues facing your students, your faculty, and staff. So it doesn't matter what type of institution you are, the Campus Prevention Network is committed to supporting your work in all of these key areas: sexual assault, alcohol and other drugs, legislation and compliance, and certainly wellness, mental health, diversity, and inclusion. And if you go to the next slide, through the network, we want to enable all schools to benefit from the collective knowledge and perspectives of their peers, as well as the breadth of expertise offered by EverFi's team of prevention and compliance professionals. And so the Campus Prevention Network website is a rich library of open access resources across core prevention topics from the previous slides. So this site's going to be continuously updated and available with new materials to support you in all of these ways, whether it's webinar recordings, downloadable training materials, publications, blogs. All of that can be accessed through our website. But beyond that, going forward to the next slide, we know that you're all deeply committed to creating safe, healthy living and learning environments for your community. So we encourage schools to actually demonstrate their commitment to prevention by becoming a participating member. And as EverFi partners, we're proud to call you members of this Campus Prevention Network. And we want you to go one step further and activate that membership by taking this pledge to embody the mission of the Campus Prevention Network and make an outwardly visible statement of your commitment to addressing these issues. And this pledge goes beyond just striving for best practices, but also assessing your efforts and measuring progress in the key pillars of prevention that we talked about earlier. And part of what we want to do to support you in that, as you go to the next slide, is to actually provide a tool to benchmark your efforts against the nation's leading prevention institutions. So as part of this membership pledge, you're going to have access to our sexual assault diagnostic inventory. And that's going to help to measure and evaluate the strength of your efforts as they compare to research-based best practices, but also how they compare to leading campuses across the country. So each school that participates in this is going to be given a designation of emerging, developing, proficient, and advanced in each of these categories, as well as rich benchmark reports to continue to improve your efforts. So please, to the next slide, I encourage you all to go to the Campus Prevention Network website, just campuspreventionnetwork.com, and learn more about taking that pledge and activating your membership, participating in our sexual assault diagnostic, and also checking out the great resources there, including some of our great upcoming events. So if you click again, you can see this includes our Campus Prevention Network Annual Summit. This two-day gathering coming up in June is for higher ed professionals at all levels to learn, share, and explore strategies for enhancing prevention and compliance efforts at your institution. And this is our 9th summit. It's sure to be our biggest and best yet. And attendance at this event is really an invaluable part of your membership in the Campus Prevention Network and being part of the EverFi community. As one attendee put it, I've attended the summit in the past and have found it to be a firehouse of amazing information that's impacted our planning and practices greatly. So this year, if you go to the next slide, we've got great speakers covering a range of topics, a keynote from a renowned law expert, Peter Lake, talking about the undoubtedly shifting legislative landscape, and a number of topics that address the diversity of roles and efforts that you all oversee. So want to just share that we're going to be sending additional communications about the Campus Prevention Network as well as the summit. But if you're interested in attending, please type in summit in the chat box if you want to come to the event, and we're certainly happy to send you a complimentary registration to help support your attendance. So please type in summit if you'd like to attend the event, and I'd now like to kick it back to Preston and George to wrap us up today.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, George. I realize, that what we just did in the last hour was a lot. And so really want to thank you all. Undoubtedly, there are still more questions, and it was important to us that we did a degree of listening today, but we also owed it to you to tell you about who we are as an organization and what it's going to represent for you going forward. And so I hope that this was informative. Certainly look forward to the opportunity to having both on-site campus visits as well as phone conversations and email interactions. My email is preston@everfi.com. Feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions. But again, really, appreciative of your time, and absolutely, as Rob and George said, welcome to the EverFi family. And with that, George, if there's any closing remarks, go ahead. But other than that, I will let this webinar come to an end.
Thank you, Preston. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Really appreciate an hour of your time, and welcome to the EverFi family. Thank you.